Knowing about our past is very important. If we would not have known about it, we might have made the same mistakes our forefathers made, and we would never learn from them. So, in order to really understand psychology nowadays, we need to know about the people who advanced in the field of psychology and made it what it is today. We'll start off with the ancient Greeks, who dedicated their lives to researching the world around them and seeking knowledge. The first Greek we are going to talk about was considered to be the wisest of them all to many people. He dedicated his life to his ideas and his reasoning. He was called Socrates by the old city of Athens. He stated that our actions defines us and that we need to question the world around us. This to understand the essence of things for achieving knowledge. The Oracle of Delphos proclaimed him to be the wisest of all men, thanks to his famous phrase, I know nothing. He also claimed that unexamined life is not worth living, that we have to see inside ourselves and analyze who we really are. So, how can we translate what Socrates said to real life? What Socrates said about unexamined life is not worth living is completely true. Let's say Sophie, she likes to party all night long, and she's very irresponsible with her school. Danny, on the other hand, he likes to party as well, but it is actually responsible. So, what's the difference between Sophie and Danny? The difference is that Sophie isn't conscious about the consequences of her actions. She thinks that having fun comes first and does not really reflect over what this can result in. Danny once had the same problem as Sophie, but one day she looked at herself in the mirror and realized that she had to prioritize differently. Danny made a change in her life that allowed her to both study and have fun. The second man was Socrates' best student, and his ideas were based on the belief that theory comes first instead of practice. His name was Plato. Plato thought that the only way you could achieve pure knowledge was to analyze deep inside yourself. By doing so, you would find the answers that you needed, and those answers were innate. In other words, they were already there since you were born. One of the most important analogies that he created at the time was his famous allegory of the cave. This is about a man whom is stuck in a cave. Therefore, he can only imagine what the world outside looks like. Not until he exits the cave he will be able to see and understand the reality of the outside world. We will use the next example to clear things up. A student chooses to quit his education at Tec de Monterrey because he does not find the school interesting. Instead, he follows another vision which he has been given by his parents and friends. The vision is about working for a company, only that he doesn't know what it is like to be on a work outside in real life. He won't know how working for a company will be until he actually works at one. The third man was called Aristotle. He was Plato's student. Despite being Plato's student, he believed that senses were important in order to achieve knowledge. He divided knowledge into empirical and rational data. What he meant by intellect was that everything in the world, objects and human beings, have a function or a purpose of existing. For example, the phytoplankton exists in our world. It's really tiny, and one might even ask, why does it exist? It doesn't do anything important. Here is where the rest of the food chain comes in. Humans eat tuna fish eats herring eats zooplankton, and finally zooplankton eats phytoplankton. The plankton is a very important part of a food chain, and if we destroy the food chain, we would not be eating tuna fish nowadays. Now we're going to leave the three Greeks behind and talk about René Descartes. He believed that true knowledge had its roots in mathematics, and he's responsible for the phrase, "I think, therefore I exist." According to him, if one wants to exist, one must think about actual existing before stating he or she exists. Descartes also said that animal spirits interact when we are asleep, creating a random disconnected experience, also known as a dream. Finally, for Descartes, mind and body are separated but they influence each other, which means that he was a dualist. Explaining this is fairly easy. Suppose you have an exam tomorrow. You have to study hard and you need to sleep early in order to allow better concentration. You end up sleeping very late and the next day you can't think very well. You perform poorly on the exam and you ask yourself, why? If you studied hard enough, you should be able to get a good grade on the exam. But the thing is that sleeping is very important. The result of not sleeping, which was something your body needed, influenced directly on your mind. The next important author we're going to analyze is Immanuel Kant. He said that some truths are certain and are not based on subjective experience. There is something that is provided by a priori, innate categories of thought. According to Kant, we cannot experience anything in the way it really is. This happens because we are not empty pages. We all have prior experiences and prior knowledge, which makes us modify the impressions subconsciously. Let's take reading a particular book for example. A person could read a book and like it, another one reads it and hates it. Why does this happen? According to Kant, this happens because liking or hating a book is a product or a result of prior experiences. If the book talks about Second World War and a person already studied it, then that person will more likely enjoy the book because he has that previous experience of knowing and understanding about what happened at that time. The vision of the world is different in each one of us, and that's why we understand a book differently. To clarify this, we cannot know what the reality of what the world actually is like. Next up is Arthur Schopenhauer. He stated that we all have a will to survive and that keeps us alive. According to him, we don't really know the reason of our acts and we act according to our needs. He said that even though there is an irrational force in humans, we can rise above it, and that intelligent beings are the ones who suffer the most because they are conscious of their environment. For example, when people don't have education and don't know what it is that's going on in the government, they're not conscious of the injustices or the bad things that governors are doing, so they don't care and they go along with it. They do not realize they're living under bad circumstances, and therefore people won't suffer as much as the people who knows what's going on out there. There's another important man who were responsible of establishing the positivism. It was Auguste Comte. He said that psychology isn't a science because it requires introspection in order to achieve eternal data. Some solutions of studying psychology can be study of phrenology, which is to relate mental events to brain anatomy and processes and study of Earth behavior. He also said that we can only be sure what is publicly observable, that you need to know in order to predict. An example could be a whiteboard. Everybody calls it white because they can actually see for themselves that it is white. Maybe that a whiteboard has some green smudges on it, and then it's not completely white. But still, everyone agrees on that most of it is all white. So they can say, it's a whiteboard and not a green board, because it's publicly observable. We're now going to explain what Charles Darwin did, who is one of the most important figures in psychology and evolutionary history. He said that human emotions are remnants of animal emotions that have been once necessary for survival. This is comparative and animal psychology. Darwin said that evolution is based on the struggle of survival, that only the fittest will survive. For him, there is a natural selection. There are variations among members of the same species that will allow the survival of some of them. Also, he noticed that expressions of human emotions are universal, which means that it's the same whether you come from Europe or Africa. To make an example of this last statement, let's think of what human emotions are: sadness, joy, anger, guilt, etc. A Mexican can tell if a Japanese is sad just by looking at his face or her face and his or her body language. It is exactly the same thing the other way around. Human emotions are the same in all places despite the big differences in culture and belief. Another major contribution to the field of psychology was that of Franz Joseph Gall, who contributed the phrenology. Phrenology analyzed the skull. It stated that mental faculty is developed by a person if he or she has a bump or a hollow or depression on the skull. Gall stated that faculties are household in specific areas of the brain. For him, mental faculties are different in each person. He also stated that faculties of the mind acted and transformed sensory information. Let's say someone's nature is to get angry really quick, more often than other people. What a phrenologist would suggest would be to open the person's head in order to see the bumps and holes in her skull, and then he might say, "Oh, here's the bump that makes this person get angry very easily." The last guy we're going to analyze is Hermann von Helmholtz. He was a materialistic person, which means that he believed that there was nothing mysterious about life. Everything could be explained by the interaction of physical and chemical processes. He also said that past and the past experience of the observer is what converts a sensation into perception. A girl who swims in a pool for the first time in her life might not know how to swim, so she tries her best to swim without drowning. This is what Helmholtz would call a sensation. She's sensing the water and finding out how to swim. The next time the girl swims, she will no longer experience the sensation, but a perception of swimming because she's already sensed what swimming is about. She's now perceiving the water because of her past experience with it. She understands what it's like to swim. We hope that you enjoyed our video and that it helps you to understand more about the fascinating world of psychology. I see you later. And thanks for listening.